Good evening, and welcome to our event, the 19th Amendment and its Legacy, 100 plus years ago, 100 plus years to go, presented by the Enfield High School Youth Vote Committee and featuring 5 prominent women from the statewide as well as the local community. We thank you for joining us on this wonderful night. Tonight we honor the legacy of suffragists and the 19th Amendment. My name is Brianna Carlin, and I'm going to highlight a few amazing women who fought for their rights. Before we begin, though, I would like to mention that in the back of the auditorium, there is a collection of panels from the Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame. The Rise Up Sister display honors the tremendous effort that suffragists dedicated in order to ensure equal rights for everyone. And if you had not had the opportunity to do so, I invite you to examine this important and most impressive exhibit after our program has concluded. The fight for gender equality has been a long one. Women always wanted political equality, but 1878 was the first time the idea to amend the Constitution and allow women to vote was formally proposed. For the next 4 decades, the 19th Amendment, or as it was better known, the Susan B. Anthony Amendment, was a work in progress. On June 4, 1919, the amendment was approved by the Senate after 41 years of debate. Vice President Thomas Marshall signed the amendment in the Capitol. On August 20th, 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified due to Tennessee's approval. This, of course, gave women the right to vote. Connecticut women, such as Mary Townsend Seymour, Frances Ellen Burr, Catherine Ludington, and Minnie L. Bradley, were trailblazers in leading the fight to ratify the 19th Amendment. On August 6, 1965, President Lyndon Baines Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act into law. The act ensured that voting rights extended to all American women, including African Americans, with its purpose being to protect the voting rights that the 15th and 19th Amendment granted. Over the last 100 plus years since the ratification of the 19th Amendment, many women with Connecticut ties have become trailblazers in their professions. Katharine Hotton Hepburn was born in Hartford, Connecticut in 1907. While she grew to become a successful actress, her mother, Katherine Hotton, a crucial figure to the suffragist movement, actively encouraged that she share her ideas, expand upon her knowledge, and spread the truth at a young age. Hepburn challenged societal norms, refusing to play traditional Hollywood roles, and chose to never wear makeup. She commonly wore slacks, and one time, Hepburn even walked around the studio in her underwear because she refused to wear anything but pants. At a time when these behaviors were not expected of women, Katharine Hepburn stood her ground, but was controversial because of her defiance. However, it was impossible to deny her talent, so she continued to get roles. Even as she gained fame, she consistently returned to Old Saybrook, her personal paradise. She was known for saying, "If you obey all the rules, you miss all the fun." Ella Grasso was born in Windsor Locks, Connecticut during 1919. She ran for Connecticut governor in 1974. Up to that point, she had not lost an election since she first became involved in state politics in 1952. During this time, Grasso was elected to the Connecticut General Assembly and was the first female floor leader, beginning in 1955. From the years 1958 to 1970, she was Connecticut's Secretary of State and had many other roles of the like. In 1970, she was elected to her first of 2 U.S. House of Representatives terms, where she served on the Education and Labor Committee and the Veterans Affairs Committee. She was the first woman to be elected governor in her own right, not only in Connecticut, but nationwide. On March 15, 1978, she responded to criticism by saying, "Women have an abundance of talent, experience, and judgment, and it is vital that these rich resources are fully utilized in government and our political system." She passed in 1981 due to cancer, but her legacy continued to live on. She received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Ronald Reagan, and a decade later was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame, as well as the Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame. Constance Baker Motley was born in New Haven, Connecticut in 1921. Growing up, she did not experience much racism and was generally unaware of Black history. However, she eventually was a key figure in the civil rights movement, as she helped to desegregate Southern buses, schools, and won 9 out of 10 cases before the United States Supreme Court. For the case of Brown v. Board of Education, a renowned Supreme Court case, She was the person who filed the initial complaint. She claimed that her greatest achievement was getting 1,100 black children reinstated in Birmingham after they had been expelled for taking part in protests in 1963. In 1964, Motley became the first black woman to be elected to the New York State Senate. Just a year later, she was the first woman and first black American to become the Manhattan Borough President. In 1966, President Johnson named her a federal judge of the court, where she was the first black woman to hold that position. Constance Baker Motley once said, "Something we think is impossible now is not impossible in another decade." Tonight, we are honored to host 4 trailblazing Connecticut women from our own time through the 19th Amendment and its legacy. 100 plus years ago, 100 plus years to go, panel discussion. This event, 3 years in the making, was initially planned by Enfield High School Youth Vote Committee members and advisors in 2020, but the COVID-19 pandemic forced its delay. This evening, our panelists will discuss 8 questions presented by Anna Bemis and Sarah Shawana, our Enfield High School Youth Vote moderators for tonight's discussion. Anna and Sarah will also serve as panelists. The questions, created by members of Enfield High School's Youth Vote Committee in 2020 and this year, cover a variety of topics. Before we begin the panel, a quick disclaimer. While we are very excited to host panelists at this evening's event, and we recognize their diverse backgrounds, the opinions and viewpoints expressed by each of the panelists are not necessarily representative of those of the Enfield High School Youth Vote Committee, Enfield High School, or Enfield Public Schools. Lastly, please remember to silence your cell phones and refrain from flash photography. Now, without further ado, our moderators, Anna Bemis and Sarah Shawana.
Thank you, Brianna. As she said, my name is Sarah Shawana, and I'm a senior here at Enfield High School, and this is my co-moderator.
I'm Anna Bemis, and I'm also a senior here at Enfield High School. Welcome, everyone. We are so happy to be hosting this panel, and we are here with several incredible panelists today. On my far right is Dr. Susan Devine, who was valedictorian of her graduating class at Enfield High School, and then went on to Smith College and graduated from New England College of Optometry, and is now a successful optometrist with 28 years of optometric experience. And next to me is attorney Brooke Goff. She graduated from the University of Bridgeport and earned her master's degree in business administration from Quinnipiac University and furthered her studies at Quinnipiac University School of Law. She is a personal injury lawyer for the Greater Hartford area, helping the injured or those suffering injustice. She also has her own radio show called Ask Attorney Brooke Goff. She also earned the Super Lawyers Rising Stars recognition in 2017.
And to my left, we have Miss Maya Nichols Matthews. She is the Executive Director of Enfield Loaves and Fishes and the former assistant to the Enfield Town Manager. She helps throughout her community with different organizations, such as the Vice President of Opera House Players, a local community theater group, and is very civilly active within the community. And to my far left, we have Miss Shannon Miller, who earned a degree of Arts and Journalism from the University of Oklahoma. She's also a co-anchor for the weekday newscasts at NBC Connecticut and has also appeared in Dateline NBC due to her reporting on the Jennifer Duclos story. She is also a very big Cowboys fan.
And unfortunately, Representative Carol Hall is unable to be here tonight due to the legislature being in a late session, but she sends the audience and the panelists her sincerest apologies. Now we will move on to the questions, and though most questions start with individual panelists, all are welcome and encouraged to respond.
We're going to start off with Dr. Devine. Considering the focus of our event tonight, the ratification of the 19th Amendment and its legacy, why did you choose to participate in this panel?
Firstly, I would like to thank the Enfield High Vote Committee, and I am just in awe of being here with these amazing women tonight. I was thinking back about the last 100 years and how much we've accomplished, but how we still have a ways to go. 100 years ago, 3% of the practicing optometrists were women, and now 47% of the practicing optometrists are women. But there is a 13.5% disparity in pay. In terms of physicians, there are 37% that are women, and there's an even larger percentage disparity in their pay. So even though we've come so far, we still have work to do, and that is why I'm here tonight.
Yeah, I think, all of your careers, I think, have been in the past mainly men-dominated. So it's great to have you all here tonight to really inspire young women as well as highlight the disparities like Dr. Devine said. So many of you are in or have been in professions traditionally dominated by men. What motivated you to pursue your current career path and profession? And this question is for whomever wishes to take it first.
I'll take it first. Is this like on? Can you hear me? I turned it on. But, oh, there it is. Okay. Just gotta move it. All right. Usually I don't need help with my voice carrying, but I mainly went into my profession because exactly what you just said, it was male dominated. So I'm kind of one of these people that grew up and said, I'm going to leave a legacy on this earth, regardless of what it is. And I found out really early that I think my legacy is going to be to advance women's rights. I put myself out there every day. I get as many great things as people say about my advertising and everything else. I get just as much hate mail from people saying, hey, what are you doing and everything else. It's a lot to put yourself out there and then to be the face of female lawyers and litigators around because you can't fail. Because if you do, everybody else was right? And the stereotypes are right. So a lot of pressure. It is. But it's, it takes a certain, I think, kind of personality, and I think my personality kind of jived with that. And I think more women have to take the risk and come forward, and hopefully my choice to do so inspires other women to do the same.
Yeah, I read somewhere that I think in 2022, 40% of lawyers were women, so there still is that.
But the question you have to ask yourself is how many of that 40% are women are litigators?
Yeah.
Typically women go into the law and they get scared away from litigation. I can assure all women that are considering litigation, it is the best area of the law you can go into. It's fun. It's not like it's on TV. It's more fun than that. But it's an area of the law where you can really show your skills. You can improve every day, and you can really help people. I feel like women feel very pressured and boxed out of litigation. There's unfortunately some judges that make women feel that way as well, which is the worst part of it all. However, statistics or not, there's not enough female litigators. I don't know what the statistics are, but I can tell you they are absolutely not 40%. I would say if I have 10 trials, the chances of having a defense attorney on the other end are 0 to 1 of those people are women.
Wow. Yeah. And I love how just open you are with everyone. Like you have your radio show where you're able to talk with listeners and everything.
I'm a big put your money where your mouth is kind of person. The radio show, we run it, then it will come off a bit, then we put it back on, then it comes off a bit. I really think that if you are skilled in your profession and you know what you're talking about, you should have there should be no hesitation getting in front of an audience, a crowd, no matter how big, how small, whether it's a whole state of Connecticut, and sharing your knowledge. Attorneys have lost their way, I believe, in the past and have just focused on the dollars instead of focus on what we really all do learn in law school, which is not how to litigate so much, but is how to find our purpose, which for many of us should be sharing our education and our knowledge with others and the public at a whole, because at the end of the day, knowledge is power, and our job is not necessarily to make money on every person that gets hurt or that has a divorce or whatever. Our job is also to share the knowledge that we have and the understanding we have so people can make educated decisions when it comes to the law.
Definitely, yeah.
Our next question will start off with my fellow co-moderator, Anna Bemis. What steps do you take to ensure that your voice is heard in a professional, or in your case, educational setting? And do you feel as a woman that you are often advocating for yourself and others?
So for me, luckily, I think in Enfield, it's pretty inclusive. I mean, the teachers and like administrators are all super aware and proactive, so I haven't really had to like ensure that my voice is heard in terms of education. In terms of like extracurriculars though, I'm a tennis player and a lot of the tournaments I play are co-ed, so I play with both male and female, whether it's against them or with them. And I have found there that I've had to like make sure that my voice is heard and I'm treated fairly. I played a couple, whether it's in practice or matches, where like if I'm playing against a boy, they won't really try. They'll just kind of look bored or not really want to try to play. And it's then when I really kind of feel that I need to make sure that my voice is heard. Especially like, I also play basketball and I helped teach K through second graders this winter basketball, and I even saw then like some of the boys wouldn't pass to the girls in scrimmages, and I kind of had to take that extra step to make sure that they were treated equally and fairly, and I was glad to be a female representative like as a basketball player there to help show the boys and girls that, you know, like there should be equality in sports. So
I feel like in the case with the little kids, like these sort of differences like start off early between them?
I think, I mean, as I said, like K through 2, like they were kind of, you could tell that some of the boys were hesitant to pass with girls, but once like I showed them like how to play with each other, and the girls were just as good as the boys. Like I think as long as they're like taught correctly and shown good examples of equality growing up, that it shouldn't start early. It should just be equality from then on.
So that's why we have this panel today.
So our next question, we'll start with Ms. Matthews. To what extent, if any, have you had to navigate workplace challenges such as discrimination, harassment, or bias? And what strategies have you found most effective when addressing these issues?
So, that's loud, thank you. I have been working since I was 16 years old. I have been one of the only black people in the crowd for as long as I can remember here in Enfield. Discrimination and dismissiveness is something that I have grown up with. If I am in the company of another white counterpart, especially a man, people will come up and speak to him before they would speak to me, as if I wasn't in the room. This used to make me very self-conscious. As I've gotten older and as I've learned more and as I've grown in my professional career and gotten that confidence to know that what I have to say does matter, then I can stand up for myself that much more. If you want me to insert myself in the conversation, I can absolutely do that. I make sure that I share with my coworkers, with my friends, with my allies, the way that I'm feeling and some of the struggles that I'm having. I don't need a man to speak for me, but I need him to definitely deflect to me. And I make sure that the people that I work with do that and support me in that way. You know, it's not easy being a woman, and it's not easy being a black woman, especially in a mostly white community. But I make sure that I'm prepared, that I know my stuff, that I have partners and allies in the community. I work very well with many of the human services organizations here in town, and I'd like to say that I'm pretty well respected. They know that I know what I'm talking about and that I have the best interests of the community at heart, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Faced other bias in your fields? I mean, I know, like I said, most of these careers are mostly male-dominated, so.
I have patients that it's not common, but I will get patients that even though they know that I'm the doctor, they can see that says Dr. Susan Devine on my white coat, they'll be like, when's the doctor coming? You know? When am I going to see the doctor? They have a bias that the doctor must be a man. And it's very, very frustrating. But, you know, you just keep your professional, you know, like you said, you know what you're doing, and you just keep that professional air and you go about your business. You get things done.
And our next question will start off with Miss Miller. Miss Miller, what are some key lessons you have learned throughout your professional journey?
It's been a journey too. I've worked in 4 different TV markets all across the country, started in Arkansas, bounced to Missouri, back to the capital city of Little Rock. So I've worked in a bunch of different environments, and then I came up to the Northeast, which was like totally new to me. Didn't really know anybody here in Connecticut, and that's kind of like the nature of the business. You go where the door opens for you. And I think that's a big thing that I continue to learn is to, number one, believe in yourself. And I think that comes with different experiences and different challenges that are presented in front of you. And we don't always get to pick our challenges either. So when I think when you go through whatever it is that you pursue or whatever it is that you desire to pursue, just know that, there's something in you that's drawing you to that there's a mission for you here, and there's a purpose for you here. So follow that. And then, trust your gut. That also comes with time too, and it's something that I'm always still working on. It's like, how do I know I'm making the right choice on this or the right call on this? So, believe in yourself, trust your gut, and, one of the biggest things I think that really in any environment is just, approach everything with kindness. And I know that may sound so simple, but in so many, especially in my business, which can be extremely cutthroat, it's very competitive. It is a very high caliber, thin airspace that people are always competing for. And the one thing I think that will always get you through is your integrity. I always want to be that person. No one can work harder than me, and I don't, I know that deep down, but I also know that there's the relationships that I have with my colleagues and my coworkers I really value, and I put a lot of effort into helping other people shine. So I think, I know I threw a lot at you, but those are just some things that I got to think back on my career and my journey that have helped me and that I continue to work on, because there's always room for improvement, and there's always room for growth, and there's always room to learn more.
Definitely agree about the whole trust in your gut thing, because I often feel myself contemplating or second guessing myself, and sometimes you just got to do it.
Yeah.
I think it's important as a woman too.
That's right, and that compass about what to do, where to go, you start to refine that as you get older, and you start to go through experiences as women, and you start to go you know what, I kind of like who I am. I kind of like that I know how to navigate this. I've got a little bit of savviness here. I know how to read the room and read situations, or how to avoid being mansplained. I think that was the term you were going for earlier.
It really was.
So I think, those are those things really, keying into that gut as a woman is something that I really think, that's something we as women really have, and so many, which is so cool about us, is that we have this real cool, intuition about things and kind of this sixth sense. And I think that's something that's really, special when you can find that for yourself and tap into it.
Definitely.
Yeah, I like this question too. And I really like that I've grown and gotten to know myself so much more that if I'm feeling uncomfortable or I'm feeling insecure for some reason, I'll sit back and sit with myself and say, why am I feeling this way? What part of this is out of my control? What part of it can I sit and say, could I do this better?
Yeah.
Or do I need to learn more about this? Do I need to be more prepared? There are certain things, if you trust yourself and with smart ladies like we are, sit back and say, okay, what do I need to succeed?
Yeah.
Because I don't like feeling like this.
Yeah, and you guys are all so successful, and I love hearing your advice. I'm taking this all in, and I will definitely use it going on in life. What advice do you guys have? Do you agree or?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. I think that we have to stop paying so much attention. I mean, I'll speak in the attorney realm, right? That's what I do. We have to stop paying so much attention to, when I go into court, we're all lawyers. It's not a female and a male. We're just all lawyers. And I think that there's a fine line between not giving it too much attention as to create an issue, but not forgetting history so we don't repeat it, right? So I think that we're all still, society is still trying to figure out what that fine line looks like. But I think all of us, you know, in some way, shape, or form, to other questions asked, have faced challenges and everything else. But it's about rising above it, and it's about controlling the narrative. I mean, if you sit in a room and let yourself be mansplained, or let a male counterpart of yours, you know, talk down to you, then that's what they're going to do. It's up to us as women to have the confidence to stand up and say, no way. And trust me, I have told 3 attorneys that they mansplained me, and I was threatened grievances every time. And I stood behind it because they were talking to me not the same way I've seen them talk to other, you know, male attorneys. So I think it's up to all of us situationally to stand up, have the confidence to stand up, own who we are, and say, I'm not going to put up with it. I feel like it's all just about that confidence. And I feel like all of us as females are put in that situation where we have to have the strength to go outside of comfort zones and say, it's not okay. You know?
Yeah, like for all of you, what kind of situations have you been put in where you've needed to say it's not okay? I mean, you've told people that you've been mansplained and they got
Yeah,
upset,
so
but
I mean, you'd be surprised. I mean, just like yours, my profession's pretty cutthroat. There's a lot of jealousy amongst like what my firm has done in a short period of time, being a female, versus what some males haven't been able to do in 30 years being in business. And it clearly resonates and it comes out. But I mean, it goes back to being kind. I don't care if you're a male or female. If we're all kind to one another, that's all that matters. And I find that what lacks sometimes, if you don't react the way you're expected to react to this, I'll use the term, I don't love it, mansplaining or what have you, is all of a sudden now we're mean girls, or another name, which I'm not going to say, and like you can't win. Like, you know, if you give the reaction that they don't want, now all of a sudden you are again, I'm not going to say the word, we'll call it mean girl. You can't just be somebody that's defending themselves. So in my situations, it's just been like I really had an attorney call me a very inappropriate name by phone because I tried to educate him about his client, and he became very offended very quickly. When, quite honestly, if he would have just listened to me, he would have given me the $1 million a year earlier, which is exactly what I asked him for. I still got the money. It just took him a year later and a billing of his client of probably $200,000 to get through, but it had to be his idea because he could not, he told. So sometimes I feel, for me, it's just the inappropriate nature in the talking down to, but I have gained respect from the male counterparts now because they know I won't put up with it. They don't talk to me that way, or they'll try to go around me and talk to somebody else in my office who have all been trained to be just like me, by the way. And there are requirements to work at the office, and they have all been trained that not to put up with it. It's okay to say, I'm done, and hang up the phone. It's okay to not put up with any kind of abuse from anything when it comes to, you know, somebody kind of trying to take advantage of you because you're a female. I'll tell you, again, not to talk too much, but in my profession, it's almost like sometimes, and again, it's a very male-dominated field, what I run into the most is people, I feel like they think like I owe them a favor. Like, okay, I'm going to pay you less money than I would pay this other person because you're you. And I'm like, listen, like, you know, your mama raised you, right? Like, you know, you're not going to offer, you're not going to, you know, women, we all serve a purpose in society. And I can tell you it's the most offensive thing when comments are made that somehow, because I'm a female, I'm supposed to fight a weaker fight, and I'm supposed to take much less for my clients. And lo and behold, they end up paying me more. Because what ends up happening is that we push the envelope even further than we had to, and the case wins itself. It's not about gender, right? But they take it that way. So again, long-winded answer to your question. In my world, cutthroat, and I'm sure you all run into the same thing, it's more just about the lack of kindness and the feeling of entitlement. I think that comes through the most.
Well, it's so important to be like a self-advocate for yourself, and I know it must be like frustrating.
It doesn't frustrate me. It empowers me.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Like, does that make you guys angry, or do you feel more empowered? Like,
I can only speak for myself. It empowers me. I come out a stronger person instantly. It doesn't matter. So it's exactly the opposite effect that they want it to have. It has. So it doesn't bother me at all.
Dr. Devine, do you feel like you have had instances where this has happened to you?
Well, I was talking before about what happens with patients. I'm in a different situation than Brooke in that I'm in more of a service industry. The patient is always right. So I have to make the best of the situation with the patient. I have had an instance where a coworker has sexually harassed me, and I dealt with that situation by standing up for myself and reminding them that they could lose their job. So in that situation, I was able to stand up for myself. But when I deal with patients being either slightly inappropriate or being sexist, I have to, it's a very fine line. And I have to realize that, you know, they're a patient and a customer in a sense. It's very delicate.
yeah, in situations like that, do you guys sometimes feel hesitant? Like, I know you were called names, and I mean, like, you with the patients, like, do you guys ever feel hesitant to stand up for yourself because of what might happen?
I just want to say that I too deal with a different clientele. So Enfield Loaves and Fishes is consisted of about over 80 active volunteers, but it's a lot of old white people that have never seen someone like me in this role before and will say off-color inappropriate remarks, but there are volunteers, right? And we are volunteer-based. So I find that I need to come at it like education. So let me tell you why that's not okay to say, and that's how I have to handle that. We feed the most food insecure in our community. So we're dealing with homeless, people with, mental issues and drug addiction. And, a lot of them they're scrapping. They're out there surviving. And, they try to see what they can get over on you and think they can treat you any sort of way. And my son's in the audience tonight, and he'll tell you I don't play with that. My mom voice comes out. And they end up respecting me because I stand up and say, you're not doing this in here. So that's, it's a little bit different.
I think like in the biggest way you can, other than when you absolutely need to, speak up, is like your work is just going to speak for itself. Just let that stand for everything about who you are, and sometimes you don't even have to say, obviously I think there's times where you should definitely stand up for yourself, but, just let your work stand for it, out-litigate, build up your practice bigger than you ever have, and, get the most volunteers and serve the most meals that any other, nonprofit has in the state. Let that speak for everything, and I think that is, a way that, you can say so much without saying, a lot at all by just being really good at what you do.
Do you ever find it hard kind of to let your work stand for itself when there are so many obstacles, like trying to tear your work down? Do you ever find it hard to like build your practice or get more done since there are so many things pushing back on you?
Yeah, we probably all face different challenges in our professions, and yeah, I think personally, like things that really I personally have kind of just tried and still work through are like delays, denials, the no's, how do you deal with rejection on a positive level, and how do you use rejection to refine you? You talked about if there's something that I don't know, like I'm going to make sure next time that I know everything about it, and I think, sometimes when you're asked in like an interview, like, oh, where could you improve? It's like, my response always is trying not to beat myself up as much because there's no one else on planet Earth that's harder on me than me. And learning to give myself a little bit more grace in those moments because it's really easy to go like, oh my gosh, like, how can I do better? Or how can I be better? But I think just learning to really be kind to yourself in that way, but also just continue to fight and grow and, keep moving forward.
And it's a lot, but as women, we're used to it. We have to do it. This is what our careers are consistent of.
Yeah, and even with the 19th Amendment, I mean, I'm sure that's what those women felt. And look at us now, we're voting, so.
And the women of color 40 years later than that.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, there's just so many obstacles, and I'm glad we're doing this today because it's highlighting it, and hopefully will inspire change in others, so. Our next question, we'll start with Attorney Goff. What do you think are some of the biggest opportunities opening up for women in your profession today? And what needs to be done to enhance those opportunities?
I think that if I had to say the biggest opportunities, I think the availability of jobs. Unfortunately, in my profession, reality is if you are a female, you are going to get pregnant, likely. You are going to have children. And big law firms don't want to hire you. They don't want to hire you because they don't want to pay you for maternity leave, and they don't want to be down a woman when they have a trial. It still exists today. Luckily, firms have really come around to trying to embrace and empower women to have kids and offer really competitive maternity policies. They do their best to do that, but I will say that, a lot of women, especially did not want to go into litigation because they were like, well, what if I want to have a family? I can't have a family. I would say in my profession, more women are having children or are having families and learning to balance both. But there's definitely an income disparity as a result. Still the major players in big law firms are still men, and typically white men. And you got to get past, that whole checklist of things in order to get hired or to be able to keep your job. My wife is a managing partner of a firm, and their firm is great, but it's taken time. I mean, they have women's, groups that they do. They empower women there. They do, they don't discourage, having families. They have maternity and paternity policies. I mean, they do what they can. But I will tell you, what's created opportunities for women in my field is the men now requesting paternity time. So sometimes, which is okay, sometimes you can't give paternity time and not give the maternity time, right? I mean, you can't do it. So I feel like the asking of many attorneys now, and the expectation of many male attorneys, which they should expect, the paternity time is as important, in my opinion, as maternity time. I feel like, though, a lot of firms being kind of faced with that, especially in major male-dominated firms, are now having to embrace the maternity time. Other opportunities, there's a lot of, I find anyways, a lot of scholarships available to females that go to law school. There are, a lot of services for women, like social services and stuff in law schools to kind of talk them through it. But I mean, my job is hard. At the end of the day, you have to want to be a lawyer, and if you want to be a lawyer, it shouldn't matter if you're male or female. You're going to do the same coursework. You're going to do the same amount of time. You're going to take the same bar exam. And if you pass, you pass. You fail, you fail. It's not because you're, the exams are graded anonymously. It's not because you're a female or a male. It's because you wanted it and you were able to do it. So opportunities, there's opportunities everywhere. I feel like there's many untapped opportunities from females. I feel like we ask and ask and ask, but then when they're given, we don't take them. And I think that you'll find that in a lot of companies, businesses, law, everywhere. It's like you can't demand these services and demand these things to get the equality, but then have 3 people out of 100 take them. They're investments for businesses. I own a business. I know they're investments. So you have to take advantage of them.
Yeah, what opportunities are opening up in the field of optometry or executive directors?
So optometry faces a similar problem to what Brooke was talking about, in that private practice is more difficult for women that are of childbearing age. It's hard to close your private practice and have a baby and be gone for 9 months or 6 months or whatever. So more women, do corporate optometry than men. Consequently, I've actually lost my thought process a little bit here. But what I was going to say was that corporate optometry is kind of taking things over, and they're doing remote exams, and it's actually bad for optometry and creating a problem with the job market for optometrists in general. Where the opportunities lie is specialty. So if optometrists, once they finish their 8 years of school, do another year of residency, they can do a specialty in disease or low vision or visual training, and that is where the opportunities lie for both men and women. And I think women should be encouraged to take that and do those residencies.
Do you guys have similar issues, like with maternity leave in your fields, or?
I mean, I've worked throughout my career, 2 different broadcast companies. Now we work for NBC Universal, which is owned by Comcast, which provides really great maternity and paternity leave. But I know other girlfriends that I have in my industry who have had real challenges, you know, when it comes to getting time off, or even like toward the end of their pregnancy, they needed to take time off because they physically couldn't, like, you know, be out in a live news van in the middle of the road in the middle of nowhere at 3 a.m. and like have a bladder that needs to, you know, have access to the bathroom. I think that at least in my industry and some of the bigger companies that are able to do that, it's accessible. But there's still that balance. My industry, you know, has very weird hours. There's, you know, in our world, there's 3 shifts, which is the morning shift, the day side shift, which is like banking hours, and then there's a night side shift. So, you know, if you're working a morning shift, you're getting in at 3:30 in the morning, you're leaving at 11:30 in the morning. If you're working night side, you're coming in at 3:30 in the afternoon and leaving at 11:30 or midnight. So as, you know, someone who wants to start a family, or someone, you know, who's trying to think about a young infant and that care, I mean, I think that's a challenge just in the hours itself. Like, news does not sleep. So I think that is a little bit of a challenge still. But I know there's a lot of women who make it work, and a lot of women that I know, you know, really feel, especially in the newsroom on any given day, can be a wild breaking news day, and then, you know, you don't know what kind of mood your toddler is in that night. It could be a wild toddler night too. So it's like you're taking off. I'm speaking from my friend's perspective, like you're taking off one hat and putting on another when you get home. And I think with a lot of industries, it's the same exact way and challenge. And let's face it, you know, kids sometimes they want their moms first and foremost. And a lot of times it seems like for the younger ones, obviously if they're still breastfeeding and trying to do all of that. So I mean, those are real challenges. And just like speaking on that note, I mean, just even that part of the job, like we work, you know, sometimes if it's a breaking news story, we're out in the field for hours on end, and it's like you've got to be able to figure out how to, like, you know, feed your baby and that sort of thing. So, you know, those are some of the challenges on that front.
On the other side of the challenges, what new opportunities are coming up in your fields? Anything?
So in mine specifically, I'm mostly in human service and nonprofit world, which were traditionally male-based. In this community, am I on? I'm not. Oh, hi. I found in this community, it is mostly led by women. The opportunities that I'm seeing coming to the forefront are women actually in director positions. This is kind of a newer phenomenon to see a little bit more of that. And, you know, with us having all women kind of participating and holding each other up, you know, we're making opportunities for ourselves and our peers.
That's awesome. I'd love to hear that.
It's great.
Yeah. Are there any opportunities?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think like there's just some amazing female journalists out there, both print, TV. I think that with so many of the issues that are at the forefront, it's really an important time to, as a journalist, you should be able to cover any story about anything, even if you have nothing, you know, someone has a very different background from you and upbringing, or
race, ethnicity. I think that as a journalist, you should be able to cover everything. But I think as far as women and covering news right now, I go back to that just like empathy part of who we are. I feel like we are really strong at finding people's stories and really empathizing. And I think with storytelling, which is so important to find that like human element, I think there's ways as a female that people feel like they can open up to you more and that they can share their stories with you in a way that's really powerful. Not that, I have incredible colleagues, male colleagues that are fantastic storytellers, but boy, there's something about a woman sometimes, it's like people just feel like they can let their guard down and, spill their guts, and that's real, and so our ability to get that kind of real response from people when we're looking for their stories, I think is something really powerful in journalism.
Definitely. And I think that when you mentioned storytelling and reporting, it kind of just reminded me of the whole Dateline NBC thing. And with you covering the Jennifer Duclos story, and that really piqued my interest. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. That's arguably the biggest story I've covered in my career, just because there was a huge mystery. Everyone, I think mystery in journalism and in TV is something that people really kind of latch onto, and Jennifer still has not been found. Approaching the 4-year anniversary of her disappearance. That story did not sleep. I eat, sleep, breathe that story every single moment. There were court developments popping left and right. There were arrests happening left and right, and I was taking tips at all hours of the night, different search warrants that were being executed. It's like a multi-layered, multifaceted type story that on something like that, when there's that much interest and media interest from both here, locally in the region, and there was international interest in it as well. Any sort of big story like that, I want to own it and be on top of it. And I had worked with Dateline before on another story in Arkansas. There was a kidnapped and murdered real estate agent. And with that story, and I was thinking a lot about why it's so important that we're having these conversations here, which is what I love to do is to give a voice to the voiceless. And in so many of these cases, these murder cases, these women that have been murdered, they no longer have a voice. But my goal is to try to find the answers and help piece the puzzle together. So my first experience with Dateline, I had gotten a sit-down interview with the murder suspect, a jailhouse exclusive interview. And I went through the proper channels. I made sure I checked with all the jail staff. We got the go-ahead. I wrote an old-fashioned letter to the murder suspect. Hey, I want to hear your side of things. And after that, which was really kind of a unique thing, the state of Arkansas shut down jailhouse interviews because they felt like that interview reflected poorly on them, allowing something like that to happen within the confines of their jurisdiction. But what I knew in my gut was that I had to get in front of him and I had to ask him, the questions that her family wanted to know, the questions that her loved ones wanted to know, why did he target her specifically? But it ended up in that particular case with the Beverly Carter case out of Arkansas, the prosecution ended up calling me as a witness to the stand in the case, and I testified as a key witness on their behalf. And that to me felt like a powerful moment that I was able again to use my skill set to question, to try to find answers, to dig up, that was found valuable to that case. And that case ultimately resulted in a life sentence for him. But I'm sorry, I'm scattered. I've been up since 2 this morning, so I'm just yapping away. But with Jennifer Duclos, that story. It's just, there was so much to it. I was in court with Fotis plenty of times, talking, same with him, talking face to face to him in the civil cases and the criminal cases. I'm still getting tips on that story. There's still a lot that's moving, but not moving. But I think, giving that moment for those women specifically, and domestic violence issues are also another big passion kind of project of mine, because so many times women's voices in those situations are silenced. I think in those cases where it's, ends up in a brutal murder, there's questions that need to be asked, and I try to advocate for these victims of these horrific crimes.
That was very interesting. Like, wow, that's incredible. That's just amazing, all the stuff you did to do that. And Attorney Goff, related to what Ms. Miller said, do you find that as a woman, people are just feel more relaxed around you and tell you more stuff, like as a litigator?
That's such a good question. So now we're talking about clients, not that they're lawyers, right? So they don't tell me anything. But I'll definitely tell you that many clients say they feel more comfortable talking to me because I'm a female. Many men say it. So I don't know if it's like a pride thing or just a comfort thing, but I get it all the time. In fact, I get sought out by a lot of men because of that reason. When they come in, they'll meet with me. Oh, I saw you on TV or whatever. I saw like what you were saying. They're like, I just instantly felt comfortable with you, because what I always push to people about choosing a lawyer, because it's, I do personal injury, so it's a horrific part of somebody's life, whether it's a minor injury, major injury, it affects your life either way in your family. I always use the term, you have to go with the lawyer that gives you the right vibe. Because at the end of the day, this is the lawyer that's going to be put in front of a jury down the road, 3% of the time. And if you don't like them or feel comfortable about them, around them, how's a jury going to feel? You need somebody that can be to everybody's level. They can, no matter who you are, you're not better than anybody else. We're all the same. And you need to be able to connect with people, no matter how much money they make, what they have, what they don't have, what their gender is, whatever the case might be, and you really have to make people feel comfortable, because I'm telling you, if the one feedback I get from jurors, and I've tried many cases, is that they feel like I'm talking to them one-on-one, and that's about comfort. So with clients, again, there are a lot of embarrassing injuries. There are, horrible injuries. And I think a lot of people look at being injured as a weakness, and it's not. And, it's just so happens that just people feel more comfortable. Now, it's funny, so men come in and they say that they feel more comfortable because I'm a female. Women give me a harder time because I'm a female, so don't get that. But, it's par for the course, I suppose. But anyways, yes, it's a great, actually nobody's ever asked me that question, but it's a great question. I would definitely say people say they feel more comfortable because, yes, of my gender.
Wow. And Dr. Devine,
So the majority of my patients feel more comfortable because I'm a female. And I think a lot of people seek me out because I'm a female, even though there's those couple males who won't acknowledge that I'm the doctor.
that's just really interesting to hear. And you deal with clients as well. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, not so much on the volunteer aspect, but definitely with the guests that come in for dinner. Our soup kitchen is the only nurturing environment usually that they see all week. And we are very constant and consistent with them. We have a lot of regulars. So, you get on a first name basis. They come up and tell you how their day was, or, what they're struggling with. And, being the director of such an inclusive and nurturing place that's just there to provide basic human services, your heart goes out to them and they can feel it. So there's a lot of emotion involved in what I do in the first place. So it's almost like a maternal feeling that they get from me. So sure.
It's really interesting just to hear how people just find you more, I don't know, maybe trusting or just more comfortable with you just because you're women. That's just, and throughout all different fields, that's just really interesting. So our next question will start with my fellow co-moderator, Sarah Shawana. So what do you think is the most pressing issue facing women today, and what do you think needs to be done to address this issue?
I think that there are honestly a bunch of issues that women are facing, obviously, and that depends on, where you are. And honestly, I'd probably have to say maybe gender-based violence towards women. And I think that is covered through different things, like domestic violence, or, honestly, you open the news nowadays and it's like you see something like maybe a woman gets murdered or sexually assaulted, and it's honestly not surprising, and that's so sad that it's like become this normal thing. And unfortunately, not much is being done to like bring this up as an issue. It's being swept under the rug, so I definitely think that's one of those things.
Yeah, that's an incredibly important issue now, especially.
I agree, especially because there was always a culture of silence around when women were assaulted. And usually when you get to the point that someone has lost their life, it's an escalation, which is definitely an issue.
And you also wonder with the Doulos story, right? You wonder what got the media attention. Jennifer Doulos, mother, five
kids,
disappearing, because I don't remember it being super sexy then. I only remember it being super sexy when Fotis Doulos, the builder of these multi-bajillion-dollar houses in Hartford, was the one that potentially did it.
Right.
So, what is it that garnered the attention?
Right.
Was it Jennifer? Would she, you got to wonder, if nobody had any clue who did it, would it have gotten the kind of attention it did? Or is it because this well-known male did it? Potentially.
Right.
Did it.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, like,
That
domestic...
disclaimer was for me, I'm sure, so it's fine.
I knew that when they read it, so it's fine. Like, domestic violence does not discriminate. Like, this happens across every socioeconomic, race, ethnicity. I mean, it is in every, I do think that a lot of it was, kind of the, almost like the, I don't know, glossy magazine kind of cover type story. I mean, the characters when you think about it, but the reality is that this happens all the time, and it is important, at least as journalists, that we make sure that in any case that every single life, no matter what the socioeconomic situation is, the race, ethnicity, that we pay attention to the issue, And you're right, though, that some of these stories do garner, a little bit more attention. And as journalists, we want to serve our customers, which is the viewers. So if there's an interest, but anytime we get any call like that, where there's a missing woman, and it's something I think that always, raises the alarm, and we know that it is of interest to the viewers, across the board.
Like race and ethnicity, also I think that plays into it, where it's like Black women, Native American women, or women of color often feel like they're being silenced and dismissed in these types of situations, especially in the media. Definitely.
Yeah, and I think what's important in my industry is, again, like I said, is because we, as women, we have such a rich, there's so many of us that have so many incredible different backgrounds. I have coworkers that have different religions than I, who culturally have really unique, cool traditions, family traditions of like, oh, that's so cool, I didn't know about that. But I think as women, I think we have a tendency, to lean in more to that and learn about each other's differences and backgrounds. And I do think, for instance, right now we've got a young producer who is going through her immigration process, and she was explaining to me, in great detail about Title 42 and how it's impacting people just like her. And I think that it's really important. I don't have that experience, but I am elevating her and encouraging her to make sure that she brings that knowledge and experience to our newsroom, because we can all learn from her.
Class right now, so we've learned about like the governments in like Mexico and Iran, and we learned a term, feminicide, which is basically what you're talking about, like gender-based violence against women, like especially in Mexico. I know a lot of like wives are just treated as like domestic servants, and violence is ensued upon them, or they're killed because of that. And so I think that it's just a huge issue right now. And like with Title 42 too, it's just like, so much is unknown, and it's just really unsettling to know that that's like occurring everywhere. It's not just in America.
I just want to actually make a personal note, since we're talking about this now, and some of you might have heard about this story, but one of our chefs at the soup kitchen, Patricia Wu Muard, has been missing in Japan it's been a month now. Her family,
With you
yeah,
guys.
she was with our soup kitchen, so, and she's vanished without a trace.
Yeah.
So, yeah, since we're taking the opportunity to talk about this, it happens, and you never realize when it's going to happen close to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you guys ever feel like scared? I mean, about this, like if it happened to someone at your kitchen, like who could it happen to next? Like, I mean,
I think there's a situational, I mean, I'm a single female, 36 years old, so like I've been on my own for a while, but I think, you know, you kind of develop like a real situational awareness as a woman, and I've been in a lot of news scenes too, where it's like, well, this feels a little off, like it's a little scary. But I mean, you know, I think that it's always good to be aware, and you hear about, you know, okay, well, if we're going to get on this topic, I think, so for instance, in light of the verdict, or yesterday, excuse me, the verdict that came down with the latest lawsuit involving Trump, I think that it's important to, how do I say this? Are we recording? To elevate certain acts against women, to make sure we know that that's wrong, you know? So I think, again, delicately saying that, to make sure that, no, it's not cool that that happens, and that hasn't been happening for millions of years, and just because you're a
Starting with
star.
comments and
Yes,
then
yeah.
leading up to more
Right.
and more bad behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that, again, it's a situational awareness thing. I think it's also just really important to know how to stand up for yourself. And if you think that a situation is leading to sexual assault or sexual harassment, you know, you say something like, you know, you don't want to do that. You're going to have a bad day if you even think about trying anything like that.
And don't be nice about it.
Yeah, but I think to your point, it's not about fear, it's about awareness,
Yeah.
right? So we all have different things that we deal with. I don't think I've ever had fear of being being a female in certain situations. However, I will tell you, professionally, I hold a license, right? So there's license review, there's, you know, something in my world called grievances, and I know that those committees are made up of mainly men. So, you know, be aware, right? So do I have, you know, is it comfortable knowing that if a client ever decided to file something against me saying, hey, look, I don't like her hair, or whatever they want to say, or she didn't, you know, I don't know, whatever they want to say, does it make me uncomfortable that I know I'm going before, I'll be lucky if I get a female on my panel? Yeah, kind of does. I'm aware of it. Trust me, I'm not one that's going to close my mouth. If I find that they make an unjust result, I'll make it known. But I feel like a lot of women don't have that awareness. They trust the system too much. And instead of going out there and figuring out who, and I'm sure, Sue, you have a licensing, like a board that you guys would be faced too. I mean, I don't know what your ratios are, but I can definitely tell you in Connecticut.
They're mostly men.
Yeah, and it's like, how do men feel about a female in their male-dominated field, right? Like, you gotta kind of, I think awareness, but I also think having the know-it-all and the confidence to stand up and not take any unjust decisions that may come from you being a female, I think is important. But I think a lot of us that deal with licensing boards and stuff in male-dominated fields, they're, ready, male-dominated. And it's just something to be aware of. But do I fear? I fear for them if they give me an unjust result, and it's because I'm a female. I don't fear for myself.
And Dr. Devine, you said you had issues in your office with like sexual harassment. Like, did you ever feel fearful about what would happen or anything like that?
So it was one incident, and it was many years ago when I was much younger. But I was afraid at the time, and I dealt with it by telling him he was going to lose his job, and I could tell there was a moment of hesitation, but that eventually worked.
And going off of that, as our final question, I'd just like to hear a piece of advice from each of you for either women going into your field or just young women in general. Like, what advice do you have for them? We can start with Ms. Miller.
I would say know that there is a purpose and a plan for you, that you have all the gifts and skill set that you need to carry out your journey and your purpose. It's already in you. And whatever you use to guide you, whether that's a higher power, whether that's an intuition, whether that's just a knowing, lean into that. The world's going to tell you that you should be a million different things, that you should be posting your body in a swimsuit on Instagram, because everyone's doing it, right? But you be the girl and you be the young lady that people know because of her smarts, because of her intellect, because of the fact that she's carving her own way and her own path, and you don't steer away from that. You know, put on your blinders, stay in your lane, and know that there is a plan for you, and know that, you know, there's going to come challenges that are going to come with that, but you are fully equipped and empowered to totally deal with everything that will come your way, and go fearfully. Just go after it. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it, especially yourself.
I also feel like I have been very fortunate to have a circle of women around me that I very much respect and admire, and will tell me the truth, and will lift me up when I'm feeling down as well. It's also important to have mentors in your life. Just keep the people around you that remind you of who you want to be. I think that's great advice.
Any high school girls or like young children coming up into the school system?
I definitely just, the whole trust in your gut thing, I really believe in, and chasing your goals, honestly, and not letting self-doubt get in the way of that.
And Attorney Goff?
I mean, I think the mentoring is great, but also understand that eventually you're going to become a mentor too, right? So learn from what your mentors have taught you and do better. I think that, you know, females that are coming up now should be thankful for a lot of the names that you guys mentioned in the beginning, because the reason why I'm sitting here is not because I'm sitting here. It's because there were many females before I did that got harsh punishments for what they did and said to put us here. I mean, we have a long ways to go, but I think that, you know, having events like this and everything else, I think really educates young girls and even older women to you know, not take no for an answer, and to be proud of who we are. I mean, being a woman used to be like a bad stigma, and if you wanted to have a job and a career, you should be proud of it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we all bring something different to society, and I think that, you know, I mean, without women, we can't grow society. Without men, we can't grow society, right? So I think that there's a lot more equality among us that we don't even realize, and that just awareness, but also moving past it and not talking about it all the time, but just going to get what you want is the key to success, in my opinion.
I think it's important to move towards your passion. Find your passion and drive towards it. I'm here, obviously, as an advocate towards STEM careers and taking a lot of math and science if that's your passion, but if it's not your passion, find out what your passion is and get educated and get the experiential experience in that and move forward.
I mean, I love all of the advice you guys just gave. Like, I think I'm definitely going to just channel that whenever I'm in an uncertain situation in the future. And you guys are you're such inspirations. And so my advice would be to listen to you guys. Listen to your advice.
Thank you all for such an amazing panel, and thank you to our panelists for being such inspirations to young women. We are all happy that you could be here tonight. Thank you all for coming, and now we will hear from Brianna Carlin again for the closing statements. Thank you.
This marks the end of this evening's panel. I would like to thank our panelists, Dr. Devine, Attorney Goff, Ms. Matthews, and Ms. Miller, for participating in tonight's event and for their insights into the ongoing fight for gender equality. We remind you that the opinions and viewpoints expressed by each of the panelists are not necessarily representative of those of the Enfield High School Youth Vote Committee, Enfield High School, or Enfield Public Schools. The Youth Vote Committee would like to thank the audience members for their attendance. Thank you to Mr. John Duty and the EHS custodial staff for helping us tonight. To Principal Aaron Clark and EHS administrators, we thank you for allowing us to host our panel. Another thank you to Superintendent Christopher Drezek and the EPS Central Office staff. We appreciate the EHS Youth Vote students in their help with running this event. We thank Mr. Joel Sine, Mr. Anthony Allegro, Mr. Sean Patrick Crane, and Mrs. Amy Whitbrow for advising us. We also thank the following people who are not listed in your program: Emily Kokoska and all other Enfield High students who assisted in tonight's event, Ms. Michelle Nassau and Mr. Robert Belarjan for their assistance in this event, Ms. Jennifer Ellis and her EHS library staff for lending us our stage chairs, Mr. Brad Millis and the Town of Enfield's Informational Technology Department for providing us with sound, and Mr. Alex Geiner and the staff of ETV for recording this event. Tonight's panel will also be broadcasted by ETV at a later date. Last but not least, we extend a warm thank you to the Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame for lending us its Rise Up Sisters exhibit for tonight's event. Again, we encourage you to check out our panels from the Connecticut Hall of Fame in the back of the auditorium. Please join us in the hall for refreshments and a chance to meet our panelists personally with any questions or comments. Thank you.